Hello, everyone. This is Data Driven Chat, and today I'm super happy to introduce Nigel Newton, who is an AI consultant and AI strategist. And Nigel did a lot of really cool projects in practical AI, especially in pharma, but he will talk about it, so I'm not gonna do any spoilers today. Hi, Nigel. It's great to have you with us today.
Ganna, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's just dive straight into it. And your LinkedIn profile says that you work in applied artificial intelligence. So for people who do not know what is applied artificial intelligence, can you just tell us exactly what is it that you do?
Yes, absolutely. The way I like to describe it is that applied AI takes known AI methodologies and approaches to create value to help recognize real-world objectives. So we take real-world data and apply known algorithmic approaches to deliver the outcomes. That's opposed to using data sets to address theoretical hypotheses. So an example may be to take natural language processing to recognize a patient's inquiry about their symptoms for a specific disease, such as COPD, which is a critical lung disease.
Mm-hmm. So your experience, just to kind of expand a little bit more on this. So your experience where from the practical artificial intelligence, do you mostly work with health applications, or do you work with a wide variety of applications, of which health is one, I guess?
Yes, it's a fairly wide range, of which health is one. Healthcare, mental health as well as physical care. But also real estate, manufacturing, working in entertainment, I'm forgetting a really key area here as well, financial services, of course. Mm-hmm. A whole range of areas where we've been successfully applying artificial intelligence to.
Brilliant. So how did you get interested in artificial intelligence in general? So on this in this series we had all sorts of people from we had someone who started as a postman and became a data scientist. Yeah.
Right.
So we had people from all walks of life. So can you tell us a little bit more about your personal journey and how did you become interested in artificial intelligence?
It's actually, I came in through the world of artificial intelligence. The way I entered was through computer vision and mobile augmented reality. So I started in that sphere. And it all happened because I've always been working in emerging technologies throughout my digital career, whether those have been web, mobile, video, social. And I was attending a conference in New York where Claire Boonstra, the founder of Dutch mobile augmented reality company Leia, was presenting about their use of image recognition. And they were using it for an application to provide a real-world search tool using the camera on your mobile phone. And at that point, I was just hooked. I was sitting in the audience entranced. And I later said to my mum, when I started working with Leia, because that was my first kind of opportunity to work with artificial intelligence, was when she was asking about it, I was like, well, remember Star Trek and the old Star Trek series with Leonard Nimoy as Spock and William Shatner as Captain Kirk? They had Bones had the tricorder. I said, think of it like that, is we're using your mobile phone, the power of that device in your hand, and we're using that as a real world search engine, so you can point it at things and it'll tell you what it is. And so she downloaded the app, of course, and then pointed it at something and said, well, it doesn't tell me what it is, Nigel. And I said, well, we can only do certain things right now, but we're getting there. There was around the same time, there was actually a UK press article that suggested exactly the same thing, that this kind of world of visual search was inspired by Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. I started my journey with Leia. I was not on the kind of technology development side. I was really on the strategy side. So applying the technology to use cases. And what's interesting about working with emerging technologies is quite often you spend a lot of time trying to find a use case that's valid. It's really quite important, because nobody, until they learn about your technology, actually understands the uses and applications of it. So when you're in that situation, you really try and understand the best possible outcomes for the technologies that you're working with. So the first application we had with Leia was scanning buildings on your street and using the combination of the location data with the image of the building to identify if that building was for sale or rent. So it's kind of like immediate application to the real world. And as time went on, Leia then got acquired by Blipper, which is a UK company. And we continued to expand on that, not just go from image recognition, but go to object detection within the image. So we started to have the ability to recognize species of trees, specific animal types. You could identify a breed of a dog. And then just towards the end of Blipper's kind of technological development, we actually started to work with face recognition as well. So being the pathway through technology to application became kind of, as the technology improved, you were able to find more uses and applications for it. One of the most successful content components with users of augmented reality was 360 video. When you could take somebody from the point that they were of discovery in the real world and then give them a completely new discovery and environment in 360, so that you could take your phone and you would move yourself around and you could see different parts of a new world. That got the highest level of engagement when we were working with users of mobile AR. And that was what really took me into virtual reality. Despite the kind of complexity of virtual reality, there's not a ton of artificial intelligence baked into virtual reality as a technology platform. But one component I found within that that I really loved about VR, and one which I'm still very much involved with today, is digital avatars, or as we call them now, intelligent digital humans. Mm-hmm. And that component of virtual reality / artificial intelligence is something that I think still has a long way to go. There is a lot of development and a lot of advances that we can begin to see happening. And as quantum computing starts to come in, I think we're going to see the rise of the digital human, the intelligent digital human, being far more prevalent within technological use cases in real business and enterprise applications.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that initially you came in on the strategy side. So do you also look at business models? Because I think one of the biggest challenges currently in practice is to understand how this emerging technology fit into a particular business model within the organization. So you mentioned you work on use cases. Yeah. So the challenge that I, as a kind of consultant to several companies, normally face is that companies come to you and say, "Oh, we want to do AI," right? and a lot of my work is like, "Are you sure you need AI?" And you can actually do it in a lot simpler way. So is it? So do you see that often? So from my point of view, just to kind of expand a little bit more on this. So a lot of companies want to do artificial intelligence because they feel they're missing the train, right? but in fact they actually do not need it. So a lot of my time is spent kind of trying to understand in the first place whether the artificial intelligence is needed in a particular application or not. So do you have the same experience, or is it different? Do you mostly get companies that...
Yeah, absolutely the same experience as you, Ganna. It's remarkable how much elevation, and I resist for using the word hype, but elevation the words artificial intelligence and machine learning have at enterprise right now. A couple of years back, when Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister of Canada, he launched a post-election declaration about supporting technology and industries. And I think he mentioned the words artificial intelligence or AI over 100 times in his speech. And the expectations around AI currently are very, very high. I'm sure everybody in the audience is familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, but it's something I very much believe in, having gone through multiple emerging technologies. I definitely think that we're at the peak of expectations right now with AI, that we're going now to slide down into the trough of disillusionment, and it's going to be a fairly long time before we come out of that and come up to the plateau again. And I think that the key thing about AI is that you need to understand that once you start to work with AI as a business or an organization, it doesn't have to be a commercial enterprise, that it's going to change what you do. And you have to be prepared for that change, and you have to be able to change the outlook of your organization. You have to be able to change the roles that people perform. You have to be able to understand that change is also going to be a psychological one for many workers who are going to have to interface with the machines. Some of their duties will be performed, but if you manage the change correctly, those people will end up being more satisfied with the work than they would have been before they began working with humans. Began working with machines, rather. I think that generally there's a lot of fear at a kind of popular press level about what AI is going to do to jobs. I actually think it's going to revolutionize the workforce, and it's going to make humans way more effective and more powerful than they've ever been. It will never take away the creative decision making out of the process, but it's perfect for when you have huge amounts of repetitive tasks or larger volumes of data that you need to sift through in order to find things. And to me, those are beginning to kind of come into the realm of understanding at a senior leadership and C-suite level. We're beginning to see now that the data preparedness is an understanding, as a baseline requirement for AI. I mean, I'm sure you've had discussions with companies where they've come to you and said, "We want to do AI machine learning," and that's great. Well, what kind of data do you have? Well, maybe we should bring somebody in and tell us what data you do. I don't know what data we have. It's kind of like they look at each other. So that was kind of the first hurdle to come over, which is data organization. And we worked on a project a couple of years back for a property developer here in Canada. And they wanted us to look at their building information systems to help them predict energy consumption levels so that they could offset the high charges from overages that they were experiencing from their utilities provider. And they gave us reams and reams of data, like literally, it was like data transfers going on for days into our cloud containers. And then when we started to look at the data, there were huge gaps in the data, like literally a gap in a critical piece of data feed for 6 weeks where, that machine went down. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and then just very inconsistent data that was not matched in any way at all, that the data points from one were every 15 seconds and the data points from another machine were every 30 minutes. And then there was another data series from another machine which only gave you a data reading every day. So then you had to kind of merge all of this information together before you could even begin to understand if you could leverage any insights from it. So knowing that you had the data challenge, that was kind of like the first hurdle for applied AI. The second hurdle for applied AI comes out of the desire of many companies to run a test, and the notion of a proof of concept has been very popular in the last couple of years. Lots of people wanting to know that they have sufficient data, wanting to know that they can actually deliver a useful outcome that's going to inform a business decision or going to be able to create value in an organization. And essentially, at the end of all of this, if you haven't designed your proof of concept to be able to be operationalized, there's this huge letdown for the client at the end, because they say, great, wonderful, now when can we start to use it? Mm-hmm. Well, you get to a proof of concept, you build a proof of concept because, in the easiest way possible, and it's not meant to be for everyday use. It's just meant to be the one specific use for a specific period of time. And I think that the thing that we need to do, and it's a little like the notion of stuck in the lab. I don't know if your audience and you are familiar with that, but this notion that in academia or in innovation labs within corporations, there's no link to the business, and there's no link to the business problem, but you're just working with data and understanding what you may be able to predict out of it, or what can you prescribe from the data analysis that you're doing. And it never really has any tangible benefit to the real world. And so it gets stuck in the lab. Well, you get it out of the lab and you get it into a real world situation. Now it's kind of connected to a tangible business problem, but you deliver a proof of concept which can only have a certain life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, work in a particular context.
And now you're stuck because it requires probably as much, again, as you spent on the proof of concept, if not more, to build a production version. So right now we're trying to encourage as much as we can to focus not on proof of concept when we identify a real world problem, but to work on something that imagines a production pipeline. So so you start to work with the IT people, you start to work with security, you start to work with the business operations side of the teams, not just the innovation leaders within the organization. Because unless you do that, unless you prepare the roadway for delivery of the project, you're not going to see it happen. I think that's the fundamental thing that's going to stop a lot of businesses getting into AI is this notion now that it's not an experiment anymore. It's not just something fun to do to tick that checkbox. If you're really in for it, you have to invest, and you have to get pretty serious about planning what it's going to look like.
I want to
answer your question, okay?
Yes, extensively, I think. So, of course, we can talk about it for hours and hours, so we will come back to this topic. I just want to come back to your career and ask you if you had to pick one most important thing that you have done throughout your career, what would it be?
Well, in emerging technologies, I think the pivotal point for me came when we created the first virtual showroom with Nissan using augmented reality. And we had the National Post, which is the kind of one of the leading daily newspapers here in Canada, along with the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star. They gave their center page spread to this initiative, and we went on to win a marketing innovation award for that project. So that was kind of like the first, I'd say, the first time that I realized at scale how influential an emerging technology could be. The next time I experienced it was with Blipper a couple of years later, when we did a project with Lucky Charms cereal boxes with General Mills, the CPG company. And it was the first time ever in the history of Lucky Charms sales in Canada, that they had a month-on-month increase in orders from grocery stores following a promotional campaign. Most promotional campaigns up until that point, you had preloaded the product into the store in anticipation of the campaign happening. And then this one happened, and not only did they sell through all of what they had put into the store to anticipate the campaign, they got follow-on orders afterwards. Mm-hmm. This is something new for General Mills. They had not thought that mobile technology and computer vision could precipitate a sales increase. Mm-hmm. So those were the kind of, like, I would say, the biggest emerging kind of technology moment. Oh, there was another one as well. Was we did a cover-to-cover interactive newspaper with the Toronto Star. Every page had something on it. It was so successful that we crashed the layer servers within half an hour of people sitting down for breakfast with their newspapers. It was phenomenal. Like it was a real exercise in the fact that I had told our CTO for months that we were going to get this huge spike in the morning. He's going, no problem. It's going to be no problem. We've got multiple redundancies. We can do it in our cloud layers. We're going to have no problems. Within 30 minutes of 8 o'clock in the morning on the day of that event, we were down. But latterly, the work I've been most proud of, I would say, has been what we've done with Boehringer Ingelheim here in Canada. And their objective was to secure prescription drug adherence for a respiratory disease that they were working with. Mm-hmm. And so what we were able to do was to provide support to critical care patients with a conversational AI interface that both gave them the confidence to continue to use their prescription drugs to treat their symptoms. It gave insights to the doctors and the healthcare teams providing the critical care to those patients. And as a result, it improved the quality of those patients' lives. And I think that if we can find more applications of AI that have a business outcome, which pays for it, but then also a social outcome where you're actually improving the quality of life for somebody, I think that's where we should be trying to focus at the AI sector and its development.
The next question I was going to ask you was about the most exciting project that you have done, but you already mentioned quite a few of them, so I don't know if you want to add something to the list.
Well,
because it could be like achievement and, the stuff that excites you could differ. So,
yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. From a technical perspective, the most exciting project we worked on was last year. Had the opportunity, and I'd say privilege as well, to work on an Industry 4.0 project that used object detection algorithms to perform visual fault inspection on automotive car parts. We built a process and an application that combined image capture with a model that we developed that identified the faults. And we were using object detection to identify the fault within the image. But what was really special about it was we were able to integrate that model into an application that was then itself integrated into the manufacturing process for that automotive inspection plan. And we did that through interfacing with a programmable logic controller. And to our knowledge, it's possibly the first time that combination is being put into a single application. Mm-hmm. And that was really exciting, being able to work with the client. They came to us, they were absolutely positive that they could improve the process. They got a grant from the Ontario provincial government to investigate, or actually more than investigate, to implement a process automation of some sort. And they determined that it was more effective to go through this process than it was to invest in robotic features like robotic components to operate machinery. And it's in production. It's doing well, and they're going to build a second line. And there's no more better testament than that. So yeah, I'd say that was the most exciting thing that we've done.
Yes, well, sounds really cool. I mean, and such a wide range of projects is, from kind of health to all sorts of other things that you have done, media and other. Yeah, so that's awesome. And I also think that, when you are working in artificial intelligence or data analytics, you should be prepared to go into many different domains, because we kind of are providing tools for domain experts, right, to be able to do more efficient things. So a lot of people who listen to this podcasts and to watch the series on YouTube, they are either, aspiring data scientists, so they want to get into AI, or they own a company that wants to get into AI, or they are executives who are trying to work with AI. So can you give advice to those people of what's the best pathway to get into artificial intelligence? So do they need to get a degree, or do they just need to kind of learn by doing? What would be what's the best way of doing this?
It's a really good question. So did you say that they're kind of like there are three type people in the audience?
Yes. So there are three types of people. So some of them are aspiring data scientists who want to kind of do analytics. So there are executives who are told that they own this, analytics or AI part of the organizations, but are trying to sort of understand it better. And so there are also, also executive students who need to lead teams, right? And they need to understand, right. Do I need technical expertise? So a lot of questions that we get on through the channel is, do I need to learn coding? How important is that? Do I need to get a degree in data science to be able to understand this better? Or can I just read a book, or can I just do a project? So that's kind of the most typical question.
Yeah, I would say that it would really depend on the level at which you want to be able to perform. And the level at which you want to engage is also another component of that. I as an emerging technology specialist, I guess I hesitate with the word specialist, because there are people who are way more specialized than I am. But
expert, we will call you expert.
Thank you. So my main strength is applying known solutions to business problems, and that's what I've been doing for over 20 years. My first projects were in the music business, where we looked at restricted play on tracks. We were looking at hardware. We were looking at how to control the number of plays that you would have over a conventional CD by using encryption to lock down and count the number of tracks that people would play off it. And then went on to build a web portal, which was basically a B2B interface so that labels could upload music assets and recordings and album artwork and tour schedules and reviews and things like that. And then Napster hit, and Napster became, I think, probably one of the technology world's first major disruptors. They basically completely disrupted the music business model by allowing people to exchange tracks and music for free. And I came out of that thinking that digital is amazing because it's been able to disrupt this. I'd already had a kind of working knowledge of digital. And your question was basically like, well, how do you do this? Should you go? Is it just by doing, or should you need an education? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a little bit of both, because the next thing that I went on to do was to build Canada's first social network for young women. So this was about the same time as Facebook was emerging out of its campus era, and we built in PHP, a social network for young women. And I wasn't the developer. I was the product lead on the project. But by hook or by crook, I had to learn what the basis of PHP coding development was. I didn't need to be able to put my hands in the code, but I needed to understand the process, because every time I would get on the phone or exchange an email with the developer, he was talking in one way and I was talking in another.
Yeah.
And
from Mars and from Venus. Yeah.
And to get to a point of understanding, we needed he needed to come down and I needed to come up. And so there's definitely a need to educate yourself. Sometimes you can do that just through reading. Sometimes you can do it by just doing. I was lucky enough to be able to kind of use the knowledge that I did have from web interfaces and delivering them to users to understand enough about what was going on in the back end to have a dialogue with the developer who was building a new one. And I think that's the key is that if you're an executive in a business role, then you can't just assume that everything is going to be on the developer's side. You have to build up your knowledge so that you can support them. They are looking for you to be their advocate at your company, and so you need to be able to speak to them on their own terms, and you need to be able to advocate and articulate on their behalf. Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to tell your boss what they're doing, and you need to certainly give them the time that they need in order to develop something. And I've learned that along the way is that if you don't understand what is involved in a task, it's very difficult to convincingly tell somebody that they need 3 months to develop this, or 12 months and X amount of dollars to get it done. So I would say that the passion will take you a long way, but if you keep your mind open and you're a good lifelong learner, then gaining a little knowledge along the way and making sure you understand what the difference is, say, for example, now between TensorFlow and PyTorch, that you can at least have that conversation. I mean, you may not ever put your hands in there, and the most you may have ever done is open up a Jupyter notebook. But if you understand what these things are, then I think that's very important. And I was very lucky. I came into AI through the portal of needing to be able to reassure clients that what we were doing was going to address their needs. And that's been pretty much my fundamental strength in emerging technologies all along, is being able to translate for the client who really has just really no idea about the technicalities of AI or augmented reality or video streaming or social network development, and being able to then take the client's needs and translate them back to the developer and say, okay, that's not going to do for them because they need it to do this. And so we have to find a way to do that. And I think that if you're coming out of computer science or engineering, and you're entering the world of AI, machine learning, and data science right now, my strongest recommendation would be don't think of yourself as a purist. Mm-hmm. Take your PhD, your master's, or whatever you have, and your specific focus and discipline, but try and add in something else. So if you're an expert in Python, or if you're an expert in C++, try and get to the point where you could at least stand up something yourself, learn how to do Java, learn how to build a pipeline. If you're working in preparing something for DevOps, learn about Node.js. Try and understand the components that you're building with, and don't just kind of like stick in your one area of comfort zone about building a model in a Jupyter notebook. Because really, in the real world, if especially in a small company or in a team within an enterprise, you're going to be able to do so much more, and that team will be able to do so much more if you know how something works end to end rather than just the middle.
Yeah, this is actually a genius thought that I don't think anyone mentioned yet in this series, that you need transferable skills, and this is how you learn them, right? Don't just go in. I like how you say like you need to go outside your comfort zone and try something. And if you are kind of the I don't know, code nerd, right? Try to start communicating what you're doing, right, to a kind of popular level, or on the other end, if you are working more on soft side, try to learn something more in science, right? So definitely, this is I think it's really important. Yeah.
Well, there's I would if anybody on the business side is watching, I'd highly recommend a course which is a Google approved certification. It's on Coursera. It's called Machine Learning for Business Professionals. Or at least it was when I did it. And it not only educates you on the fundamentals of data science, but it also actually takes you through 3 different labs, and you have to classify images for a computer vision application. You have to adjust a model and adjust features to a model so that you understand how that kind of weighting and balancing happens. And it gives you the clarity that you need and the vocabulary that you need in order to talk to a data scientist or somebody who's in DevOps who's preparing something for production. And I think so if you can keep yourself educated enough to be part of a really clear forum for discussion, then I think that's the best you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you mentioned a lot of important things, and so you also talked about the importance of data for business in particular, and I kind of want to come back to this point now. Mm. And you already talked kind of quite extensively about why data is important for business and how businesses have no idea what data they have, and sometimes they have no idea they've got gaps in the data, which I'm sure to any person who consulted any company on anything is a very familiar problem. Mm-hmm. So the question I'm just so I was going to ask you why data is important for business right now, which we partly addressed, but I guess I'm also curious, do you think that we already saw the data potential in businesses being fully realized, or are we just at the beginning of this journey? Is it that we have a lot of underexplored power in businesses where they have potentially data that could be used in more creative ways, or they have data they might not even know about, and that data could be used to improve operations or improve parts of business model. So what is your take on this? Generally on data in business.
I think one of the things that's really interesting about data is that enterprises and organizations have spent millions of dollars over the last decade collecting data.
Right.
And there is, I think the last business, I think it was in a Harvard Business Review article that I read this, something like 3% of the world's data is actually utilized for decision-making and actions, follow-on actions. And so, yes, there's this huge potential, but there's also, there's no point in data mining for data's sake. Like, you have to have a real business reason. I mean, as we
problem
know,
statement. I call them problem statements. I was like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And normally,
right.
I don't know what you get, or very often I get, well, we just want to use, the data. But so yeah, but is there a problem that you're trying to address? Yeah.
We did one study for a sales team at a pharmaceutical company. They wanted to know how to optimize their sales visits. Now, all of this data, very well kept data about the people that they were seeing, that included everything like that. The doctors, where the doctor graduated from university, where they did their residency, all this kind of information, very granular. And they already had this kind of, what would you call it? Like not really a rules-based system, but they had a procedure or a process already in place where they would prioritize and plan according to certain metrics from this data. And so they asked us to see if we could apply machine learning to improve it. And all we could do was equal what they were doing in their own manual processes. And sometimes that's the way. Sometimes the data is really rich, but the improvement, the delta that you can provide between what you can do manually as a human through inference and what you can do through a model and inference is not any significant improvement. And sometimes it's actually worse because you're asking the model to infer on something where humans have to use a certain level of intuition. But as we know, I mean, there is no data science and no machine learning without data, because if you want to produce a model, you need to have historic data, or you need to have live data to perform the predictions, and if you're doing it for a prescriptive point of view, you also need a constant kind of data input. What I think is really important right now for business is to recognize the relationship between the data that they're collecting and you could call it, I think you said problem statement. Mm-hmm. Where I look at it right now is more around where the opportunities lie. Mm-hmm. So if a business needs to grow, what are the growth factors? Mm-hmm. And if the growth factors are, let's take a simple thing, that you want to sell more of a widget, let's say. If you don't know how many widgets you've sold over history, to whom and at what price,
and why,
then you
and why they were bought, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some basic fundamentals around model development that I think businesses should be universally be able to understand. So if they can look at the challenges and see where their opportunities lie, and that's intrinsically what good business people do, is they look at their marketplace, they look at their service, they identify product market fit, and they can establish, okay, there's a market that we haven't gone after before. If that's their market intention and they want to apply data science and machine learning to improve their track record and reach the objectives that they're looking for, then yes, we can build a model. So as long as the problem is defined, like you said, and the problem statement is really clear and the data is there to relate to that problem statement, then we can do it. I think we talked about the gaps in data and the inconsistencies in data, and that does certainly erode the potential for performance in the real world. But you need to go beyond precision and recall to ensure that meaningful predictions are there that businesses can make decisions upon. And if like you say, if the business doesn't know what they're trying to do, and they just want to do something with the data, then the wrong people are in the room. That's why it's like, maybe you just have the data custodians, and actually what you need is the people who are in charge of the business, the people who are setting the targets, the people who are creating the sales expectations and planning around growth.
Mm-hmm. So we obviously cannot avoid the topic of COVID, and COVID affected everyone, and I'm always curious about the role AI could play in solving the current crisis, including, currently we have even problems like how do we distribute vaccines, how do we identify who should get them first, and all that kind of stuff. So, and we had all sorts of opinions. We even had some kind of special episodes when we talked exclusively about COVID and data analytics with several domain experts in the series. And, the opinions really diverge. Some people say, well, AI, or we as data scientists or AI folks should not intervene and leave it to domain experts. And others say, oh, there is a lot of potential that we can really help here. So where do you stand on this, in this debate? Do you think there is potential for AI to help, and in which ways it can help, if it can?
I think AI is already helping. I think it's already proven that it can assist with in many ways around COVID-19 in terms of logistics, like you said, in planning. But also, I mean, the same principles applied for modeling genome mapping have been applied to modeling for drug combinations for vaccines. And that was why we were able to fast track between the steps that you would normally have to go through for clinical development. There are many drug combinations that you have to try before you can try one out in the real world on a clinical trial. And using AI, that's what accelerated the process. That's why the pharmaceutical companies were able to bring vaccines to market within 12 months. And I think what's really interesting is that now we also have, I think the test started in January of 2020, I think. So we now have over a year of data from tests that can provide a great source for modeling, that can predict the rate of transmission for variants, that can predict the rate of hospitalization, that can help predict the pressure on our healthcare system. So the notion that AI has a role here, I think, is very, very compelling. And that we should be doing whatever we can to make sure that the people in charge of making those decisions have the tools available to them, and that get the support of the data scientists and the machine learning developers that they could really use.
So in your opinion, what are the main challenges for AI going forward? Well, obviously, on practical side, COVID will be one, but if we take if we take the global picture, not just in a particular domain, what are the main challenges?
Well, we touched on it earlier.
Yeah, we did.
We were talking about the challenge of being stuck in the lab.
And translating it into.
In my discipline, I'd say that what I mentioned then earlier as well, which is the proof of concept trial. I think the other challenges that are facing us right now is the level of business and institutional funding for testing the effectiveness of AI applied to business problems, and then insufficient planning and funding to operationalize it. So there's these budgets available for programs, but they're not anticipating that the programs will see real-world applications, even when the results are proven to be beneficial to either industry or organization. So I know, as I said earlier, that introducing AI does require a transformational change. So another challenge is definitely going to be making sure that the C-suite and senior leadership teams develop those change plans, and that they take on board and that they acknowledge that they need to be in it for the long game. That it's not just like, give me an AI program or an ML model and let me see the reduction in costs or increase in efficiency. That most of these changes are going to have incremental performance in the first couple of years, but as the machine learning model develops and it benefits from tuning from the business users, and it benefits from the modification of data and performance, and starts to evolve, because a machine learning model does, you can't just kind of, it's not, you can't bake it and then that's it forever. It's a living thing. It has to kind of grow with the business, and it has to grow with the environment. It has to grow with third-party influences. And so I think if enterprises can understand that it's like introducing computing was back in the 90s, that they have to be able to kind of understand that this is going to change everything across the whole of the field of operations, and that these changes will have varying levels of effect, and that the change will be measured in different ways and perceived in different ways by different people, but that you have to stick to the plan. That's the key. Mm-hmm. I would say also that as AI proponents, we have to make it easier for them. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we always do that. We have to make it easier for them to see the benefits of that change. We need to be able to combine technology with strategy, so that when we talk to their IT department, we've anticipated what their questions are going to be, so that they say yes and don't kind of like put a 6-month blocker on this because we haven't gone through certain levels of protocol. I think startups who build on AI, they have this kind of understanding innately. They kind of build it into their DNA as a business. And it's much harder for an existing organization to understand where they should begin to introduce AI and how they should map out a pathway to increase AI adoption internally that enables the growth of their business and improvement in their staff and an increase in their margins.
Mm-hmm. So what's the future then? I know that you are an optimist. You said at the beginning, we're gonna be all we can get rid of all these tasks that really annoy us in data collection, and it will be. So obviously there are different views, right? Some people are really concerned about the ethics, and they are really concerned about surveillance in the workplace and other things. So I sense that you are more positive about the kind of the value of AI in the future. So yeah, what will be the kind of going forward, the hot topics in AI, or how would it develop? What is your prognosis here?
My diagnosis is probably a prescription of observability and explainability. I think those two things are going to be really important in the next 5 years. It's not going to be possible to implement an AI box anytime soon. The people really need to understand what it's doing, and when something happens, they need to be able to go back and discover what happened and why it made that prediction, or why that prescribed action was taken. So that's what I think is really key. I think the next 5 years are going to be slow and steady. I mentioned this earlier about the kind of slipping down into the trough of disillusionment. Mm-hmm. I think that we've had a rapid period of growth over the last 5 years with much testing and exploration, and that the next 5 years will be about settling in with those companies and organizations who recognize the benefit, partnering with them to develop and implement growth and growth-oriented planning. And then I think that by example, the followers will come in. So there's going to be a nucleus or a core of companies that have recognized those benefits and embraced them. And they are going to continue to develop this. And we're going to work with them as strategists and consultants and data scientists, and we are going to make sure that we do it really well, and so well that everybody else is going to want to come on board. Does that sound optimistic?
Yeah, that's super optimistic.
A little bit of pessimism.
So Nigel, we touched on a lot of topics, and so tell me, what are you currently working on? What keeps you awake at night? What makes you excited these days?
I'm currently working as an advisor to founders who are working on startups. some with new startups, some with startups have been around for a couple of years. One in virtual experiences, which is using VR immersion for therapeutic care, for pain relief, and for also just societal collection and mental well-being.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on a AI-powered dynamic video content platform, which is using machine learning to create content for multiple audiences. And I'm also working on another application for career support platform using machine learning to support women's career development in technology.
Sounds exciting, and definitely very important projects there from
thank you.
Even social point of view.
And to your sleeping point, what keeps me awake at night? Luckily, I don't have any problem sleeping. But in my waking hours and reflective moments, I'm still looking for opportunities to help others, to find additional benefits beyond the kind of pure economic objectives, improve our lives, reduce our impact on the environment, protect what remains, and give an equal share of voice to and attention to those people who are ignored and suppressed. I mean, it sounds very grandiose, but I do think we have a role to play there. And there's a great company here in Toronto that I learned of because one of my colleagues at Filament went and joined them, and they're called Flash Forest, and they are using multiple facets of artificial intelligence to optimize reforestation of areas that are either clear cut or have been destroyed by forest fires. And they're using computer vision to analyze maps captured by cameras on drones. They're then using predictive modeling to identify those areas of that affected area which are going to be most receptive to the seedlings. They're using modeling to also to identify the soil type and climatic conditions to identify what type and species of tree are going to thrive and grow best. And then they're delivering this via drones with planting, so that they plant in the most receptive areas where the seedlings are going to grow, rather than the human planting. When you go into normal reforestation, humans just are told to plant a seedling every 6 feet. So they move forward, 6 feet, plant one, 6 feet, plant one. But that's not always the most effective place, because the humans are just randomly taking a measurement to plant a tree. So what they're doing is just great. I mean, that's, to me, is like, that's the pinnacle of AI being able to benefit things. I also really love what we did at Filament and what Filament continue to do, supporting mental wellness through conversational AI. We launched a project for Kids Help Phone here in Canada. And there's a similar project that Filament in the UK are doing with the NSPCC, and providing a chatbot interface so that young people can get access to mental health resources, to get access to the support that they need, or education, so that they can understand their situation or the situation of friends and family.
Brilliant. And so in this video description you will see Nigel's contacts, and I know he's very present on LinkedIn and other social media, so you will have all this in the video description. So here we are almost at the end of the interview, and here are the 3 most annoying questions to all interviewees that everyone complains about, but I keep asking them because our audience normally asks for kind of, what can I read, what can I watch, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So here's the first question. If I asked you to pick one book and one film to recommend, what would you recommend? And this doesn't have to be an AI related. It's something that you like and keep coming back to, and potentially, can also advise others to read and watch.
I'm not annoyed by this question at all. I love reading.
No, everyone loves reading. Everyone has a problem with picking one. One each.
Well, I'm going to cheat then. My fictional book would be Consider Flaybas by Ian M. Banks. He's a Scottish science fiction writer who also writes fiction novels. Sadly passed away a few years ago. Consider Flaybas has general intelligence at its core. It's remarkable. His vision of a future world or a future society off planet, like not our planet, somewhere in the galaxy, far away. But his depiction of it and his ability to understand kind of the realm of possibility of technology is just incredible. So if you haven't read any of the Culture series by Ian M. Banks, start with Consider Flaybas and then don't stop. It's just amazing. On the non-fiction side, I got introduced. I think I got given this book by a colleague, and I dip into it every once in a while when I want to be reminded, as my colleague and the GM of Filament in North America would say, it's not magic, it's math. The book is The Drunkard's Walk. It's by an author, Leonard, and I'm going to murder the pronunciation, and you would do it excellently, Ganna. Leonard Mlodinow. Mlodinow. I do not know how to pronounce that. I'll get my English tongue around those syllables.
Yeah,
it gives us a great understanding of how randomness and statistics are such a key component of our current society. And much of what we do in predictive machine learning is advanced statistics, and this really helps you understand where it all comes from. And it goes way, way back, right back to kind of the origin of math. It goes with the Greeks and the Romans, and it goes through how statistics came into being through the Age of Enlightenment, through scientific discovery in the Victorian era, and it brings it right up to date. And it all gives real world examples all the way along the way. And it's not that kind. It's not like a page turner. It's not like you get really excited about, unless you really like nerding out to statistics. But it really makes it accessible, and it makes it understandable in a way that was very reassuring for me. So any of you people out there who want to get a little bit of education about stats, and I think pretty much every data scientist on this watching this will go, well, what do we need to do stats for? Like, we did stats in that was like one of those required courses in year one in university, if not in high school. But yeah, it's a really great book. As for movies, I am a sci-fi nut, and dystopian futures are my favorite kind of movies. So I'd have to say the original Blade Runner, the director's cut, would be my recommendation there.
A brilliant
But if you've watched that, and everybody may have, then Looper is a close second.
Well, you can tell that Nigel is a great consultant and strategist, because he just sneaked in 4 instead of 2 suggestions. But fantastic, yeah. Well, all of them are very, very cool suggestions, and definitely please read and watch. And I will also put in the links for these suggestions in the description, in the video description. And yeah, the final question that I decided to ask this year is also about fictional characters. So who is your favorite fictional character?
My favorite fictional character? Oh my goodness.
I know it's a tough one.
It's funny when you say, I would have to say Tigger out of Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. So
the wonderful things about Tiggers are wonderful things. Yeah, the bouncy, fun, 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 fun.
And he's an optimist. He's an optimist, that's for sure.
We not an ego.
Yeah, and he tries new things and has transferable skills. That's it. He always goes outside his comfort zone. So I can see the connection. Oh, well, Nigel, thank you so much for being with us today. It was such a delight to have you in the series, and you have provided a really broad range of ideas for our broad audience. And thank you so much for finding the time.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share some of my passion. And if anyone does want to reach out, always available.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So this was Nigel Newton for you. And like I said, there will be his contacts in the description. And he's definitely, I can tell you from personal experience, he's very approachable via social media. Almost immediately replied to all my all my messages on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Nigel. And for those of you who are watching us today, so we'll see you next time. And hope to see you in the next data-driven chat. Thanks a lot.